using this artificial intelligence. What are your thoughts on that?
It's just a tool. But I would never rely just on that. You could like spit out a paragraph, but it's going to need a lot of editing and stuff like that too. So let me tell you, never start an SEO company because we write like 300 blog posts a month about selling houses. You'd be surprised how hard that is. You can love me or hate me for this belief. I don't believe that there's good keywords and bad keywords. There's no such thing.
Hi, everybody. Jose Luis Morales here. Welcome back to another episode of the Residual Real Estate Agent Show. Today, we've got Brandon Bateman. He is with Bateman Collective. He is a digital marketing specialist, and today he's going to be sharing with us how to find motivated sellers. Now, this is important because I get a lot of people that tell me that they want to get into wholesaling, that they want to get into flipping, that they want to get into buy and hold rentals, but they don't know where to begin. Let me give you guys a tip. It starts with lead generation, and today's episode is going to cover that. So he's going to be going over direct to seller marketing, how to lead generate for motivated sellers. Welcome to the show, Brandon. How are you?
Hey, doing great. How you doing?
Before I ask the first question, I just want to remind our viewers that if you are new to the channel, make sure to hit that subscribe button. If you feel that this episode would add value, make sure to share the platform. So let's start off, Brandon, with who is Brandon Bateman and how did you get involved in this wonderful world of real estate investing / digital marketing?
Good question. This is a business that I started back when I was in college, believe it or not. I was a sophomore in college. I was super passionate about marketing, really wanted to get into it. Couldn't find any great opportunities, so I just decided to call up a whole bunch of companies and just ask them if I could do their marketing. And turns out one of those introduced me to someone in Utah here. I don't know if you know him by any chance. His name's Cody Hoffheim. He co-founded Wholesaling Inc. If you know the company, they we're one of the bigger coaching companies and stuff like that. So anyways, I started doing digital marketing work for this real estate company, and we grew it from like $100,000 worth of revenue with digital marketing up to over $1.5 million last year in wholesale assignments from digital marketing. And through the whole time, at some point I looked at my business and I was like, I like all our real estate clients. I don't like the other ones as much. And, we decided this is what we were going to focus on. It's all we're going to do. And at this point, Bateman Collective is the name of the agency. We work with with investors in over 100 different markets across the United States doing motivated seller lead gen. Most of our clients are flippers, wholesalers, occasionally a hedge fund or, something like that. And that's kind of, I guess we found we're really good at it and I really like it. And that's all we needed.
That's awesome, man. Cool. So, if you don't mind kind of just going over the different types of digital marketing that you specialize in or that you like to do, and then we can kind of dig into each one of them individually and kind of share with the audience some of the nitty gritty as to how they work.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's tons of digital marketing channels, but the reality is there's 3 that we found that actually produce success when it comes to motivated seller lead gen. And those are pay-per-click advertising through Google ads, or sometimes Microsoft ads, Facebook advertising through Facebook, of course, sometimes a little bit on Instagram, and SEO, which basically stands for search engine optimization. All 3 channels have their own value, and they work a little bit differently from each other. And that's kind of what we found produces success. A quick crash course on how they're different. SEO and pay-per-click through Google are both search marketing. And search marketing is something people like a lot because it's instead of you finding that someone's on a list and you go into them and send them a postcard or calling them or whatever the case is. This whole process starts with someone making a search on Google, which demonstrates not just a characteristic about them as a person, but it demonstrates some type of intent, which turns out is more predictive of their behavior than anything else. Right? What someone types into Google tells you a lot about them. Specifically, if they search for a way to sell a house in any condition, you got a pretty good idea that person has a poor condition house that they want to sell. Or if they search for a way to sell a house fast, then they probably have some urgency in selling their house, and those things have a lot of meaning. So those kinds of leads are really, really popular with our clients just because the lead quality is completely different. It's a fully inbound lead, pretty much as inbound as you can get. And then the other channel is Facebook ads, which is going to be, sort of in between, because you still do go to them with an ad first based on who they are, and then they respond with a form. In comparison, it tends to have a lower lead quality, but it's a lot cheaper because pay-per-click gets expensive and SEO takes a long time. So every channel kind of has its own thing. Facebook's cheaper, pay-per-click's immediate but expensive, and the leads are really good. And then SEO is kind of a cheaper, long-term way to get those same kind of PPC leads.
That's awesome, man. Cool. So let's start off with the Facebook option. Like if I wanted to start maybe doing Facebook ads myself, like what would that process look like in order for me to get started and to basically target motivated sellers, meaning people looking to sell fast, people looking to sell fixers, people looking to sell properties at a discount generally?
Yeah. So with Facebook, usually the way that it works is you have to create some type of online funnel. So you have a page that people click to. There they can submit their information. There's a clear call to action that you're going to get a cash offer if you submit your information here, or whatever the case is. Then the game becomes getting an ad to get people to that page, and then it becomes same, or targeting the right people with that ad in general. So I mean, there's a lot that goes into it. My general advice to people is that I'm not a huge fan of self-managing these kinds of things. You could say that I'm biased because we run an agency that does this for people. I honestly don't think I'm biased. Like, I think it's like, honestly, we find that when people self-manage their accounts and then we take them over, they just do significantly better. They're more profitable. The crazy thing is, if you look at like what it costs to hire an expert to do it, usually our clients only need about 3.5% better results in order to completely cover the fee. And statistically, we usually do about 35% better when it has to be 3.5%. Mm-hmm. So that's like, if you ask me, it's just more profitable, and it's not a headache to hire someone to do it. So like, that would be my first step, is just working with an expert, to the extent that like, if I was a real estate investor, with everything I know, if I had to, if I wanted to do that, I would not do it myself. I would hire an agency, even me knowing everything I know, because they have efficiencies that I wouldn't have. But no, so I think that's a good first step.
I agree with you. I agree with you 100% on that. Like, meaning that like, we were doing like email videos to our clients, and we had one company do it, and then we had another company do it, and the results were completely different as it relates to that. So I agree with you in terms of having an expert. And I also agree with you that like, sometimes you're so focused on other things in your business that you're not maybe paying attention to the most important thing, which is obviously the marketing and how to attract the clients. Can you give us an example of maybe like an advertisement that you guys have ran for a client that maybe is like a high performing ad? And then can you kind of show us a little bit as to the targeting, how the targeting works as well too, for maybe like a Facebook ad?
Yeah, I'll give you some secrets with Facebook. The number one secret is the stuff that our clients like is not what works, as sad as it is. It's so funny. Like, that's how I know which variant's going to win on the split test. It's whichever one the client likes the least is always the one that wins. Uh-huh. And there's some logic to it. So I'm going to hopefully peel it back for you. So if we're looking at the ad itself, we like ads that qualify really heavily. And by qualify, what I mean is it attracts only the right kind of person. Picture this like an online bandit sign. There's a reason that bandit signs, when people use them, aren't just like super interesting and attract everybody in, because it's not about getting everybody, it's about getting the right person. A lot of our Facebook ads are extremely boring. We make them almost so boring that only a motivated seller would click on the ad, because no seller that's not motivated would have any reason to click. And the way that it works, this kind of bleeds into targeting as well. Facebook is, there's a lot of targeting. Believe it or not, the absolute most effective targeting that we use, the highest ROI audience, is a complete broad audience, meaning it's just like geographic. Like, if you're in Southern California, we just start Southern California. If you're in New York, it's New York, or whatever the case is. And nothing else. No layers for like all kinds of different things. And the reason being, Facebook's algorithm works in a kind of counterintuitive way that's so much different than all of these other marketing channels. Picture it like this. If you were doing direct mail in the ocean and you just said, I want the ocean, What direct mail would do is just picture it like it's fishing. You're just going to cast, move over 10 feet, cast again, move over 10 feet, cast again. Like that's just kind of fishing the ocean. And a lot of those casts are going to be wasted, right? That's why with direct mail, we target like, where's the reef, for example? That's where we're going to find more fish. The thing with Facebook ads is it doesn't work like that. It looks at the whole landscape, predicts where you're going to find the fish. As it starts to cast, when it gets bites or when it catches fish in certain places, it doubles down on those places and starts to learn the trend and is analyzing every click on 1,000 different levels. And that is so much more powerful than the targeting that we can do. So even more important than targeting the right audience is giving Facebook the right feedback when a valuable action happens so that its algorithm can find the right audience for you, which is going to be so much more effective. So it's a combination between the audience strategy and the creative strategy. We do a broad audience, but we make our creative to belabor the fishing analogy. Imagine if you're just putting bait out there that anybody wants to bite. It's not going to train your fishermen very well in knowing where to fish. But if you put bait out there that only the right kind of fish bites, and then you focus on where you get more bites, then you're going to fish in the right places for the kind of fish you want to catch. So we make our ads so boring and so unattractive, like a super ugly piece of bait sitting in the water, so that only like our true motivated seller fish wants to eat that. And then when that happens, Facebook learns where that happens. It learns what kind of things correlate with that happening. And it basically narrows in within the audience on the place where it's most effective. And that's in my experience, the most effective strategy.
How boring are we talking about? Like just like almost like a bandit sign, like we want to buy your home for cash? Or is it more like a picture of like an individual, or is it more like a picture of a house? Or are there any even pictures of anything on there, or is it mainly based on the copy, like meaning like what you're writing as well too, just to kind of give us an idea? And then the other thing I was going to ask you is, how do you give Facebook feedback? But I think what you're saying is that the feedback, how does Facebook know, like meaning like how do they know which ones are working versus which ones aren't? Is there a way to give them better feedback as well?
Yeah, all really good questions. So let's start with the first one there. What does the ad look like? So I mean, I exaggerated a little bit about how boring these really are. Some of our staple ads are like, it's literally just like a picture of a junky house, and it says like, in the text it says like, we buy houses, we can close on your schedule, do this, like, think some benefits and stuff like that. So it's nothing too intense. Some stuff that's been working well for us recently is sometimes like videos, like selfie style videos that look really native to Facebook of our clients, like talking about how they help sellers. It's a really good opportunity to kind of connect one-on-one there. The really important thing is qualification. We make sure that they like talk in such a way that only a motivated seller would be interested in what they have to say. Not just like, if you want, picture open door advertising is the opposite of what we want. Like, find out what we would pay if we gave you an offer on your house tomorrow. Like that's going to give you the wrong kind of fish biting your bait. And then Facebook's going to get confused versus if we have an ad that starts out like, that basically says, in some more eloquent way, like, are you in a distressed house situation? I can help. Then hopefully only the right kind of people gravitate towards that. And that's going to help. So how you give that feedback to Facebook, the second thing that you talked about. So Facebook has something called a Facebook Pixel, and it is a piece of JavaScript that you can put on your website, and you can program your website so that when certain actions happen, you're reporting to Facebook that those things happened. So for example, someone fills out a lead form on your website, and then you report to Facebook that this person right here filled out the lead form. They match it with their database of who saw ads and stuff like that. And that's how they learn. You can also tie in offline things, like, for example, if there's a phone call that happened on the website, or we even tie in information about contracts and deals that our clients get and pull that into Facebook. So that's like, there's other complicated ways. And in a lot of ways, like that's what we do that's uniquely different from our competition, is we focus on tracking everything closed loop, because we understand it's not just about generating leads. Not all leads are created equal. And we want to narrow in on the best kind of lead quality. And I think that's what we're exceptionally good at. And a lot of that has to do with measuring things beyond online events into offline actions. Like, did the lead become qualified in our CRM, or was it a contract? Was it a deal? That kind of stuff.
And we're able to give that feedback back to Facebook, basically, if it closes, or is that just for internal purposes for you?
The answer is is yes and no. So yes, you can feed it back to Facebook. It's difficult to use it for those optimization purposes, but you can kind of inferentially look at it and understand how to adjust the campaigns according to those things. And then there's also online actions that we qualify. Like, for example, we have someone go through one step form, and then we have them go through a second step of a form that basically like is so ridiculous that only a true motivated seller would fill it out. And then if they do that, we report them back to Facebook and we can optimize based on that event. Despite that being like a deeper lead, not just any lead. So there's like a whole bunch of things. And the reality is we're doing a bunch of things at any given time and we're testing them. We haven't spent a single dollar in the past 3 years that wasn't on the split test.
I was going to ask you, maybe for viewers out there that don't know what a split test is, if you would be open to kind of sharing what a split test is, and then also what the process would be like and why, and the benefits of maybe split testing. And then before you kind of get into that, I just want to, because some of our viewers are real estate agents, and here's kind of one of the things that I've learned as a real estate agent. It's good to think about this as an investor as well too, because you have investors targeting motivated sellers, but you as a real estate agent, you could target the same type of sellers. Some of those sellers are going to turn into deals, like meaning like flips, wholesales, and some of them are going to turn into the retail world as well too. So you're not only marketing for motivated sellers, but it could also be a lead generation funnel for marketing towards sellers to grow your retail business as well too.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And honestly, a lot of our clients are hybrids where they kind of have both exit strategies, so to speak. And they'll get a lot of listings from the leads as well as cash deals. So there's a lot of value there. So split testing, what is it? The most simple form of this is the concept of an A/B test. It's where you, like, just to make it super simple for mail or something, like, let's just say you take your list, you cut it in half. Half of the people, you send them one postcard, the other half you send a different postcard. You see which one produces more of whatever outcome you're looking for, and then you learn something. And the idea is each time you just change one thing on the postcard so you understand how does that particular thing impact results. That is how a split test work. Online, we get... So in the spirit of going deep, tell me if I go too deep. But if we're looking at testing and optimization, there's really two general categories. One of them is called inferential, and the other one is called predictive. And inferential is the whole concept of like what a lot of people think of as a traditional split test. I did this, I saw that this worked better than that did, therefore I cut variant B and I just go with variant A, or whatever the case is, like your standard A/B test. Predictive is a hot topic now. It's all machine learning, basically, and artificial intelligence. And the way that works, it's there's a comparison that's used sometimes, calling some of these algorithms like a multi-armed bandit algorithm. Think of like, a slot machine could be like a bandit. And the idea is like you have a whole bunch of slot machines and you're putting money in them, you're seeing how they perform, and then, you start winning in some, but you don't know that just because you didn't win on the other one, that it's not going to win at some point. And you're basically trying to see which slot machine has the best ROI. And the way that it would work is as you slowly become more confident that certain things work better than other things, you start to focus more on those things, but you don't cut out of the other ones. And it's like a constant reallocation of budget in a predictive way based on how well things are expected to work. And we do a lot of that online digitally. So it's not like you have to wait until this moment when suddenly we have statistical significance and then we make a change. It's that all the way we're just kind of like making those little tweaks along the way with an algorithm. And then the other thing really cool along that side is like, for example, if you run Facebook ads, you can do something where instead of just like even showing which ad works best, the Facebook's algorithm basically sees, here's this new person we could show an ad to. And then it predicts based on other people, like which of your ads is most likely to impact that particular person based on the attributes it knows about them, and then dynamically delivers the asset that's most likely to have a positive impact for them, which is a form of like, it couldn't even be called testing, but it's used in place of what a lot of people use A/B tests for. And we do kind of group it in. That's digitally, you get to do all kinds of cool things like that you just can't do like with cold calling or direct mail, or at least not easily.
Now, when doing Facebook ads, it sounds like it's starting off wide, and then as the algorithm or the AI starts to kind of get to know what's working and what's not working, it almost like narrows it down, or not narrows it down, but it starts to get more selective as to which type of person is more likely to do something. Do you guys track cost per click? Do you guys track cost per sign up? What is the metric that somebody should be, cost per conversion? What is the metric that somebody should be tracking? And what would you say is a decent ROI, or what can somebody expect for maybe running Facebook ads with you, or even themselves or another company?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I mean, there's a lot of metrics that matter. For me, the core metrics are our funnel metrics, right? In the top of the funnel, you put in cost, and then that cost is going to give you a certain number of impressions, which is someone seeing your ad. And then from that, you get a certain number of clicks. From that, you get a certain number of leads. From that, you get a certain number of qualified leads. From that, you get a certain number of appointments, and from that, a certain number of contracts. From that, a certain number of deals, and from that, a certain amount of revenue, right? So these are, like, I know it's extensive, but if you run that kind of business, I'm sure you follow that really easily, because that's just kind of how all the marketing works. And every metric that I care about is just some ratio of those numbers. So one like really standard metric is cost per lead, right? You're taking the very top thing and then something kind of in the middle of the funnel, right? A lead. And that is, that could be influenced by, like, for example, cost per 1,000 impressions. Like, what's the cost of the advertising inventory, or the click-through rate, the percentage of people clicking your ads, or the conversion rate, like the percentage of those people who click that then turn into leads. And we care about all those metrics along the way, because if something's wrong, we have to know where it breaks up and where it's wrong. But to give you a really standard, like normal-ish Facebook ads metrics, like if we're just, like, every market's going to be so different, right? So if we ever talk about a specific market, I can hopefully give a little bit more context. By the way, what is the market that you're working in? Maybe I can talk to that a little bit.
I work in Ventura County, which is like south or north of Los Angeles, south of Santa Barbara. We're like right in the middle of Los Angeles and Santa Barbara. I was going to ask you that if it also varies by market as well, too.
For sure, by market. In that market, what kind of average wholesale margins are you looking at?
I don't do much wholesaling. I know the profit margins are probably maybe I don't know, like 8-10%. I don't know, to be honest. I'm more on the retail side.
I understand.
Not fully transitioned to the investment side yet.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And the reason I ask you that is because a lot of these things benchmark on wholesale prices. And the reason being that's a particular piece that correlates with competition, right? Your area is going to be a higher deal size area. If I had to guess, maybe we're talking about 40 or 50 grand on a wholesale.
Per deal, on a wholesale, basically, yeah.
Yeah. And then flips are probably like 100-ish or something like that, just guessing, right? So let's just say we took that number and then we back into this. Like, it'd be normal to, let's just say, invest $10,000 into ads. And from that, you're going to get a certain number of impressions. And from that, you're going to get a certain number of clicks. But by the time you get to leads, we take $10,000 a cost per lead. That's realistic of, say, $200 per lead. At that, what does that get us? 50 leads-ish. From those 50 leads, it's common to say that maybe we're going to get, in a market like yours, lead quality is lower. Traditionally, it's like 30 leads to a deal. In yours, maybe it's like 50. It's hard to say, right? But let's just say those 50 turn into 25 like real leads, like there's some spam and stuff there. And then those 25 real leads turn into 5 or 6 appointments. And those 5 or 6 appointments turn into one deal. That's like a standard, like a normal kind of metric to follow. And then if you look at that, then that would be basically $10,000 in, 50,000 out. That would be a 5-to-1 return on investment if you were able to achieve that kind of thing consistently. So it's, like I said, highly variable by market, because your cost per deal could be what someone's entire assignment fee is in Indianapolis or something, right? Because it's just an expensive market. These numbers vary so much, but those are the things we care about, is like all those different funnel metrics. And what we do for any of our clients is we look at their metrics in the normal funnel and we figure out where it's breaking down. Like, maybe they're having a harder time contacting leads than some of our other clients. Maybe their appointment conversion's low, so they need help with closing. Maybe they have a really expensive ad cost. So Facebook's just going to be more expensive in the area, or not as many people are converting on the landing page. So we have to look at like what kind of quality traffic we're driving and all that kind of stuff. Like the metric depends on the issue, I guess is my point. And it's just really like, how does your funnel compare to what it should look like? And that's the kind of thing that's the kind of situation where working with that expert really helps. So you're not just guessing, right? Because a lot of people look at it and they're like, oh, my website has a 2% conversion rate. That's horrible. But like, why do they think that's horrible? Right? You don't have any context. Maybe that's a really normal conversion rate on your website. So that's where a lot of our clients value our expertise in knowing like, is this a normal metric or is this not a normal metric? And, seeing where they're doing exceptional and seeing where they're not doing as well.
That's awesome. Does the landing page matter where you're driving the traffic for conversion?
Absolutely. Yeah. If you have a landing page that converts better, then you're going to get more leads. Landing pages also produce different types of leads. Because if your landing page says like, put your address in here and get an instant cash offer on your house, it's going to convert really well. You're also going to have a lot of conversations with people that aren't that serious. Versus if your landing page kind of connects with someone that's in a more distressed situation and sets a really clear expectation of what they're going to get if they fill out the form, then it's a different kind of lead quality. The landing page absolutely matters, but I'm not one of those people that thinks like just go with whatever converts best. It's all about what's going to get you the best ROI. And sometimes that is a landing page that doesn't convert as well, but qualifies really well.
And sometimes having more leads isn't generally beneficial just because it may hide some of the good leads. And then there's a cost to be able to go through all those leads as well too, meaning like there's a labor cost of somebody having to go through that. So your cost per lead may actually be higher and a lot more work happening versus getting more targeted like the way that you're describing it as well too. What about the accuracy for information? Like, is that like, if people are opting in, is that pretty accurate, like the information that you're receiving? Because I know sometimes with other lead sources, you get like funny names, just funny names, funny phone numbers, a lot of John Smiths, so is there anything that you can that you have to do there, or what does that look like?
Yeah, good question. So the first piece of this is that there's two main ways to collect a Facebook lead. There's Facebook forms, which are pretty commonly used in this industry, where you don't even leave Facebook. Like you click on the ad, it just pops up with a form in there. It actually autofills with that person's information, and then they just click submit. And then there's a landing page where you send someone to a website. They have to go all the way away from Facebook, all the way to this website. They have to fill out the information manually. So the second one gets you way less leads, but they're way better. The first one gets you more leads, but they're less qualified. And you have a lot more unworking numbers and all that kind of stuff. We do a lot of the second one because a lot of our clients want to push lead quality higher. And we find that for the most part, we can get more deals off of less leads by doing that. Because we're giving more high quality feedback to Facebook with that kind of system. And also it qualifies a little bit heavier. But yeah, people will put all kinds of dumb information in those forms. You're going to have people who fill out a form, you call them back after 20 seconds. They're like, I have no idea what you're talking about. You'll have people filling it out drunk at 2 a.m. Like you get it all. So that's why it's important to understand kind of like what a normal metric is, especially because Facebook of online channels is the worst lead quality. That's why I said that generally, like in my example, I said maybe 50 leads, that is 25 real leads, right? What we consider is a real lead is like a seller who actually answers the phone when you call them. And of course you have to be good at being fast. You have to be good with aggressive follow-up, all that kind of stuff. But when they do answer the phone, they actually have a house to sell. And they're not just confused or something. And for Facebook, 50% is like a good standard benchmark. We have some clients as high as 80%, some as low as like say 20% in the worst of scenarios on that metric, but 50% is pretty normal. And then the rest is like spam, confused people, buyers and renters that were confused, like all that stuff is really normal.
And then does the ad time matter? Like, do you guys just run ads 24/7? Because I know you mentioned 2 a.m. on one of the ads. Does that matter on Facebook specifically? And then how often, once you answer that, how often like are we revisiting the ads? Is this something that's checked daily, weekly, monthly? What would be standard for Facebook advertising?
Yeah. So So the first question was time of day. Yeah, there is something called day parting where you just run ads at a certain time of day. For us, we generally will run them 24/7 because that's where you have the best choice of opportunities to choose from in terms of what's going to get us the right kind of lead. So that works pretty well. And with Facebook, there's some complications with putting a schedule on it, just in terms of like it limits your types of campaigns that you can run, which
Mhm.
it just like a platform specific thing that's a little bit weird where it's not ideal. So, but anyways, taking that aside, I'm sorry, what was the second question you asked?
In terms of frequency, like how
Oh
often
yeah.
are the ads revisited?
So this depends on how much money you're spending on Facebook ads, of course.
Mhm.
Like I've worked, for example, with companies spending not in real estate. This is before we really focused in real estate, but we worked with companies
Mhm.
spending $30,000 or $40,000 a day on Facebook. And in those kinds of scenarios, it's like three times a day.
Make it daily.
And
Yeah,
you're making
that's funny.
adjustments. Like it's because you know what? Yeah, you do it three times a day. And, since you last checked, you sent 10 grand and you have a lot of data and your split test is complete and all that kind of stuff happens fast.
Yeah.
Versus if you have a really small budget, you need to give it enough time before you look at it to have a statistically significant sample size to even do anything. So for us, like the way it works for most of our clients is we have different parts of our process that happen at different times. Like some basic level checks are done like three times weekly. We have some stuff that's a little bit more in depth and takes a little bit more data that's done weekly. Other stuff that's done monthly that's a little bit more high level. Like for example, overview of the entire strategy, reviewing lead quality, adjusting budgets, that kind of stuff.
Well, I think we've learned a lot about Facebook. Let's transition over to pay per click and let's transition over to SEO. If you're okay with that, I like pay per click and SEO just because my YouTube strategy is very SEO based, meaning that like we try to rank for certain keywords so that when people look certain terms up, we're ones that pop up. Do you mind kind of going over a little bit about PPC and how it can benefit a client?
Yeah, as I reviewed before, PPC is of really high lead quality. It's a paid search lead, which is, search marketing is just nothing else like it in any of these other channels. Like all those things start with you going to the seller, and this one starts with the seller going to you. It's a different kind of lead. And what that means is that usually the sellers are more motivated. So when you do a deal, it's bigger. And also it takes less leads to get to a deal. Uh, and when they do close, they close faster because people are in active search. So the whole question of like, is it the right time isn't as much of a
Mhm.
question with these leads because more commonly now is the right time because you didn't seek them out. They sought you out. So there's a whole bunch of reasons that pay-per-click leads are really good. The downside being they're very expensive and the channel as a whole can take a little bit of time to get ramped up. We've had people start with pay-per-click and just expect to like be killing it after 30 days, which does happen sometimes, but is certainly not something to count on. Where it's one of those channels where you really have to be consistent with it in order to produce the kind of result you're looking for. And the result that you look for happens in a way that almost like proactive people struggle with it because instead of like going out there and hustling and getting some business, you just kind of sit back and wait for people to come to you. And very few come to you because the lead flow is slow on pay per click. And for some people that are really proactive, it drives them crazy because they feel like they're just not doing anything. In reality, few people come to you and you can still do a decent number of deals because the lead quality is high enough. But yeah, you gotta just kind of be ready to like turn it on, be consistent with it, and see what kind of result you can get. And some people struggle with that.
What makes a PPC strategy work versus one that maybe doesn't work? Is it the budget that you're um, investing? Is it the amount that you're willing to pay per lead, or how does that entire process work?
Yeah, let's talk about budget first because this is a really common thing that people talk about. My belief is budget doesn't matter a ton, honestly. You will get leads proportionate to your budget, but there are two types of things. I don't even know how you like categorize these, but like things,
Hmm.
so to speak. There are some things that compound and other things that diminish. And to give an example, like war would be a good example of something that compounds, right? You could put more and more effort into it, but there at some point, it's enough effort to win the war. And if you don't win the war, it's just not worth it. right?
Mm-hmm.
Even if you were just below that amount of effort. This, in my experience, is how a lot of investors think about PPC, but it's wrong because PPC actually is a diminishing effort. Think of it like vacation time. Like if I never ever took a day of vacation and then I took one day in the year, how much would that one day be worth to me? It would probably mean a lot. If I take 2 days, now that second day is not worth as much to me as the first day was. If I take vacation 6 months out of the year, now each day is just not worth that much to me because it's very normal. And there's a diminishing effect. And of course, it's nice to have more vacation, but at some point, it's like, it's just not worth it to have more vacation. That's kind of how PPC works. And the reason I share that is a lot of people say, like, what budget do I need to like actually be successful with this? The whole piece of context that's missing from that is the time frame. Because a smaller budget will work. It just takes more consistency and more time for it to produce your result. If your cost per lead is going to be, say, $300 and you're spending $10,000 a month, then someone spending $20,000 a month is going to get twice as many leads as you, minus a little bit, right? And it's not like your leads that you get are any worse than their leads that they get. They just get more of the same type of opportunity, and you actually pay less per thing. Like maybe they have to spend $320 per lead, and you have to spend $300 because of that diminishing effect. So the reason I say that is all budgets work, but a lot of investors think that there's like some magical threshold where when you pass that, it works. The reality is if you have too small of a budget, what you risk is that your patience runs out before your money does. And I've seen that happen a lot. So some clients we recommend a larger budget to get them results on PPC, but it's just because we know if we don't, then they're going to run out of patience before they run out of money. And if you can just make it happen faster, then they'll actually stick through the end of it happening. And that's completely essential to be there. So there's budget. Outside of that, like what actually differentiates between a good pay-per-click campaign that works and one that doesn't? Pay-per-click is one of those things where there are 1,000 things you have to do right. If you do any one of them wrong, it's not going to work. And that's where it's like, we could talk about it forever, but there's a few places that I see people screwing this up a lot. I did specifically today, I did 2 audits with companies where they basically brought their underperforming pay-per-click campaigns to me, which by the way is a free service that we provide. We'll always, look into an account and see what's happening with it. Both of these clients had the exact same problem. And it's that they weren't getting the right kind of traffic. If you look at their keywords, they're trying to target things like sell my house fast and we buy houses and stuff like that. But if you look at their search terms, like what are people actually typing into Google when they're clicking on their ads? It's things like houses for rent near me, buy houses, all that kind of stuff. And then these clients are, sitting there confused that they're not getting the right kind of leads. And also that they're getting so much website traffic, but they're not getting deals and stuff like that. It's targeting the wrong kind of people. Google wants to take the most wide view of your targeting as it possibly can. Like you type in the keyword, we buy houses, and then Google decides that buy houses, if someone searches it, is kind of close to we buy houses. So they're going to, throw that in there. The reality is we buy houses and buy houses are very, very different meanings if someone were to search them. But to Google, maybe it's the same thing. So controlling that, and the way you control that is by having the right keywords and the right negative keywords, which is when you specifically tell Google, I don't want this thing if it shows up. That's how you do it. We have a negative keyword list that's like over 100 times longer than our keyword list because, we've been tracking for like, we've literally gone through hundreds of thousands of search terms and over years and, so much money spent on PPC in this industry. So we've like seen all the bad stuff and we exclude it when we see it. But that's a really common thing I see that like, it's almost like nothing else matters if you're not even targeting the right person in the first place. Once you are targeting the right person, like where people go wrong is just lack of optimization with it. Like there's all kinds of different ways to like value the advertising inventory and bid. Because it's an auction-based system. You bid in order to win a click, and there's lots of ways to overpay. There's ways to not pay enough on the things that you need to be aggressive on, or to not value things appropriately compared to each other. You can get a bunch of traffic to your landing page, but if your landing page isn't right, then you're not going to convert that traffic into leads. Your ads have to be written in a way that qualifies, but also converts. There's like an endless list of things, but probably the biggest mistake that I see people running in their own campaigns is what I had mentioned about the search terms being bad. Because you don't even have an opportunity to make any of these other mistakes if you don't at least get that one right. Right. So the way what I explained to both the people I talked to today is you got to fix this so that you can then be eligible to have the problems that people usually have, which then you can fix, and then you'll be where you want to be.
You know, it's funny. I never knew that there was negative keywords, but that makes sense how Google would, like, we buy houses, buy a house. They're so similar in that way. So let me ask you this. What would you say are some of the best keywords people can use in their ads?
Really good question. I'm going to like avoid the question, if that makes sense, and answer it a different way. I don't believe in this. I mean, you can love me or hate me for this belief, but I don't believe that there's good keywords and bad keywords. There's no such thing. So to give you an example, just because we both understand what wholesaling is, at least.
Yeah.
Let's just say I want to wholesale in your market. If I came into your market and I just said, like, the way people make lots of money for wholesaling is I see that they're like selling these houses for a lot of money. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find all the most expensive houses, and then I'm just going to buy those. And that's how I'm going to make money wholesaling. That would be wrong. Likewise, if I went into your market and I just said, I'm going to buy the cheapest houses because it seems like it's those cheap ones. Like if you could buy cheap, then you're going to do well wholesaling. So I just find like all the junkiest properties I could possibly find. I'm not necessarily going to make money that way either, because it's not that I find high value things or I find them for a low cost. It's the difference in value that's important for wholesaling. It's that I find undervalued things. Whether I'm paying $500,000 or $1 million for the house, it's the point that I'm paying $1 million for something that's worth $1.3 million that matters, versus paying $1 million for something that's worth $750,000. So to say that there's good keywords and bad keywords would be to say that that's an appropriate way to wholesale. The reality is PPC, so a lot of marketing channels, you deal with a fixed cost variable value model. Think of it like direct mail, like maybe you're paying 40 cents a postcard. It's going to cost you the same amount to send that postcard no matter what. And then depending on who you send it to, it's going to be worth more or less to send it. So that's why we're always thinking, like, how do we narrow down on the good stuff? But PPC is different because the value is variable, just like in direct mail, for example, but also the cost is variable because Google doesn't tell you what to pay. You choose what you want to pay. And if you pay more, then you'll have more opportunities to win those leads. So for us, like, let's just say keyword A converts at double the rate that keyword B converts. That doesn't mean that keyword B is bad. That means that we need to bid half as much for keyword B because its value is about half of what keyword A is. And for that reason, we'll bid on keywords that are great. We'll bid on keywords that are low. The key thing is we look for discrepancy in value. We want to buy something for $1 that's worth $10, or for $10 that's worth $100. It's about that margin that we're looking for.
It's about finding maybe keywords that are undervalued in the Google marketplace, because that'll give you a higher return on investment versus maybe like keywords that everybody is targeting and therefore overbidding. And it also has to do per market as well.
Exactly. It's highly competitive. It's like, so that's why you can't say it's like going to be the same thing across all markets, because it's purely dependent on what your competitors are doing and what those different keywords are worth in your market.
In Southern California, I don't know if you manage any clients out here. What would you say a cost per lead or cost per lead would be in Southern California for pay-per-click specifically?
Yeah, I'm trying to imagine Ventura County because we don't have any clients there right now. We've done a decent amount of work in like the Inland Empire. I'm pretty familiar with like San Diego or LA. This is going to heavily depend on where you're at.
Very similar to San Diego, our market. Very similar.
Okay. Yeah. And the way that these markets work in my experience, because these are going to be like big deal markets, like among the biggest in the United States, because your ARVs are super high. So in terms of cost per lead and how that would typically go, like for us, like a standard is like metro areas being $300 to $400. Some cheap metro areas as low as like $200. And then if people go wide, like we have clients targeting nationwide in the United States that get leads for, $30 or $40 or $50 each. But then you go into a place like San Diego, what we find is like, it's not like the lead cost goes through the roof, but it ends up taking a lot more leads to get to a deal. So maybe that's an area where you're dealing with closer to like a $400 or $500 cost per lead. But then you end up needing more leads to get to a deal. But a deal is going to be worth 50 or 60 grand in those kinds of areas often. So that's how it tends to work. But yeah, we generally don't see cost per lead getting beyond 600. 600 is like the most expensive I pretty much ever see. And then 30 is probably the lowest I ever see. And then there's everything in between.
From the time that you get the lead, is response time important? Like how fast you get back to the lead? And how, if important, how important is that?
Yeah, I think you're asking because you probably heard it's very, very important. It's one of the biggest differences when we look at our clients that convert leads well versus those that don't. This is one core thing that differentiates them. For us, the gold standard is getting the leads within 60 seconds. It sounds extremely fast. I can tell you it's extremely valuable. You've probably heard the idea of like there's different dollar per hour activities in your business. Mm-hmm. Like you have $10 an hour activities and 30. And I'm convinced that there is no higher dollar per hour activity in your business than the time it takes to make a phone call within 60 seconds of when a PPC lead comes in, with the amount of time it takes and the true value that has for the business. Because we have, like, for example, I have a client here in Utah. They close 1 in 10 PPC leads. They average $35,000 on them. Every time their phone dings with a new PPC lead, that's worth $3,500. If they take the call, then they'll get it. If they don't, then they don't. Because it's not about the patience of the seller. If let's just say I'm a seller, mm-hmm. What I'm going to do, like this is just standard like psychology of buyers and sellers, right? I have a pain, right? That pain is what causes me to take action. I go to Google, I take that action. I am going to search until my pain feels solved. So if I reach out to a company and I don't hear back from them immediately, I'll reach out to another one and then another one. And you have to picture maybe they just reached out to another company and now they're reaching out to you. They reached out to the other company 2 minutes ago. If that company is going to call the lead within 3 minutes, you have to call them within 60 seconds to beat that company. And the first person that gets on the phone with the seller makes them feel like there's no other seller in the world. And no matter what, they're going to be their guy, I'll help you. Makes that seller feel like their pain is gone. That's the person who's going to get the deal, because sellers are emotional. They make their decisions very quickly. It's not unreasonable that they could talk to someone and within 20 seconds, just based on the tone of the conversation, how competent they view the person they're talking with, all those kinds of things, basically emotionally decide that they're going to sell to that person, even if they haven't signed the contract yet. So it is critical that you be the first to talk to them and that you make a really good first impression. And I see very few activities that have higher value in the business than that.
And then how does pay-per-click and SEO, do they help each other out in any way, shape, or form? Can you have one without the other, or do you need both in order to be successful with this Google strategy?
They're both great, but they don't need each other. It's different ways of getting the same kind of result. So SEO, you can do independent of pay-per-click. We have plenty of clients that do pay-per-click independent of SEO. And there should technically be no advantage to being in either situation. Mm-hmm. A lot of people say like, well, Google favor those that pay the money and stuff. And like they shouldn't. I haven't been able to find any evidence of them doing that. It seems like SEO operates pretty much independently. It's just like if pay-per-click is like a vending machine, you put this money in, mm-hmm. get that money out. SEO is like owning a vending machine. You're just like getting your money over time. Think of SEO like a rental property and pay-per-click like a wholesale, for example. Okay. They're just different kind of marketing. SEO is something that does compound. You build it over time, and it will generate leads consistently with that when you get to a point. And overall, it'll cost less than pay-per-click will. Mm-hmm. We find that over the long term, it has a 4 times greater return on investment than pay-per-click does. But it takes a while to get there. And pay-per-click's like the quicker strategy that's just more expensive.
Are most of the leads with pay-per-click converting like immediately, or are you finding that some of these leads have like a certain average conversion time, like a month, 2 months, 6 months?
It's normal for about 50% of the deals to come within the first 30 days or so. And then the other 50% after that. We even have clients that close leads 3 years after they come in. If you do it long enough, you'll start finding that stuff like that does happen from time to time. But yeah, it's pay-per-click on average is going to be a faster closing channel than other channels. The thing is, it takes a while to get that metric for you specifically, just because those outliers that are going to be in a really long time are part of the average and everything.
Mm-hmm.
So like some people say like it's a 30-day conversion. Other people say it's a 60. Other people say it's a 90 or whatever. The reality is it depends on how long you've been measuring it, because the longer you've been measuring it, the further back it's going to look. And then it also depends on how good your follow-up is. Just because you can close half the deals on follow-up doesn't mean you will. And we certainly have some clients that do significantly better with that than others. I have a lot of people like coming to me bragging, like, we close all our deals so fast. And I think of that like, well, no, you're just not good at follow-up. It's not that you're great with closing early. It's that you're horrible with closing in 6 months. You got to do both. So it's like that's where the real money is made, right? Because the quick deals are what's going to cover your marketing spend and make you a little bit of money, and then everything after that's going to be margin. So it's that's where our clients start to get into the exceptional ROI range.
What would you say makes a good SEO campaign, and what would you say that SEO is where people are struggling as well too?
There's a lot of people that just don't give SEO enough time. It's a long-term game, so you don't want to play the game unless you're in it for the long term. There's historically, so this goes through phases, and I think it's important to say that SEO comes down to more than just rankings and leads and deals coming from online. It's also about the risk with which you accomplish that, because there's different risk levels associated with any kind of SEO strategy. And the reason I share this is because there's some people that are just like, my SEO strategy is amazing because I got rankings super quickly, but they're doing a lot of stuff that if Google updates their algorithm is going to shut them down. They're basically gaming the algorithm instead of being what Google wants you to be in order to be relevant and repeatable. So that's where, like in my opinion, SEO, all of the value comes in the long term. So if you're playing in a way that helps you in the short term but cuts out that long term advantage, then it's not worth it. So that's where that's probably the biggest mistake I see people making. And honestly, like vendors are kind of incentivized to play a bad game there, because all the real estate investors are just looking for quick results. And turns out if vendors can do that, then their clients will be happier. Mm-hmm. So that's where it's like, you just got to be really careful that you're doing it all in a way that's effective long term, because that's where the real money comes in. But within that, I mean, tons of things go into SEO. It's like a lot of our staples for clients. It's like optimizing the website technically. Mm-hmm. That's like an important baseline. Like you just need that in order to even be eligible. But beyond that, it's a lot of content, because Google needs content in order to rank you for things. And then it's authority. And authority comes through backlinks, which is basically links from other websites to your website. So it's building backlinks, building content, those kinds of things on a technically optimized site, done consistently over time and done naturally, like natural types of backlinks, natural content that's well written, that kind of stuff is what produces results.
What does optimizing mean? Like, is it just the backlinks and the content, or is there other stuff to optimize a website?
I mean, what I describe is kind of like the three core disciplines of SEO, like technical, on-site, and off-site. Mm-hmm. Off-site meaning things that happen not on your website, like links from other websites to yours. On-site meaning like optimizing, like for example, putting the keywords in the copy on the website and making it making it appear relevant to certain things and posting new content and stuff like that. And then technical being things like making sure like Google's spiders can crawl properly on the site, and making sure that you're indexing pages well, and making sure that the page loads fast so that Google favors you, and like all that kind of stuff. So those are like the three core things, and there's a whole bunch of different things that you can do in there, but any SEO strategy requires all three of those things. Yep. And if you don't do all three, then it's really hard to get results.
Yeah. What about the algorithm? Like, how do you figure out, or when you say that do things that Google favors, what does that mean? Like things that Google favors, or yeah, what is Google looking for? Because I know that some people are playing the short game, and therefore if their algorithm gets updated, which I hear gets updated as well too. How frequently does that happen? What does Google want to see long term? That way our people know what to focus on as well too.
Yeah. So to give you the important distinction, it's between natural and unnatural things. So to give you like quick history lesson with SEO, Google's been doing, like, they do algorithm updates like probably on like close to a monthly basis. Like they'll do like a little notification when they do it. But there's big ones and then there's small ones. And there's some like famous ones. Like there's like, for example, Panda was like one of their algorithm updates that was back, like I can't remember when it was. And it's like famous for putting so many, like there's Panda and Penguin. I know they name these weird, but Panda and Penguin put so many internet companies out of business because they were doing certain SEO optimization. And then overnight, their rankings fell from super great to absolutely horrible.
Wow.
And like entire companies got destroyed by an algorithm update with Google. And those were like really important things. But then there's also going to be updates in the future that we don't know. The thing is, SEO used to be about gaming the algorithm. And when I say gaming the algorithm, I mean things like, for example, like at the very beginning, it was weird stuff. Like, for example, I have this web page and it's mostly white, and I'm going to put some like white text on the white background that like puts my keyword in there 700 times so that Google, when it's crawling it, thinks I'm like super, super relevant for this thing. Like that stuff used to work like way back in the day. And then like it's moved into like link schemes where it's like number of backlinks is really important. So I'm going to spin up 10,000 websites and link them all to my website. So I have a bunch of backlinks, or buy, these links from link farms that are doing that same thing, and stuff like that. So that's an example of like black hat stuff. And so to give an example of like how people are doing these things wrong and how we do them, for example, on backlinking, it's common to still be doing that stuff. Like, for example, buying links from websites that are just created like pretty much for the purpose of backlinks. It's an unnatural situation where Google sees like all these websites linking to each other, and it seems like a link scheme. And it's basically just like not in a way that's earned and natural, and Google can detect that. Versus like on our side, what we're doing is we're writing blog posts. We're finding websites that are like contextually relevant to the industry and have good authority with Google. We're basically pitching them. Can we put our blog on your website? We want to write content for you for free. Then we're posting that on their website when we win the pitch. And then we're linking in that blog post to, maybe it says like, oh, it's also an option to sell your home for cash. And you can see how much a cash buyer would pay. And that's a hyperlink that links to our client's website where they have a blog post talking about how much cash buyers pay for houses. And that is also informative and relevant content that's well written. And that's natural, for example, because that's how companies actually do things, right? You write something, you make another reference to something else that's contextually relevant. And then you link to it, and then that thing talks about more stuff. And it's also on this third-party site that we also don't have like a bunch of links coming from that site for our other clients and everything. So it doesn't look like it's a link scheme. It's just all very natural and evergreen, basically. Like Google's never going to have a problem with that kind of stuff versus just like buying links from sketchy websites where, as soon as Google figures out what you're doing, they're going to penalize you for it.
How do you figure out what topics to write articles on? And then is there certain articles that produce better outcomes, like certain length of the article, and maybe some strategies for writing good articles?
Yeah, good question. Let me tell you, never start an SEO company because we write like 300 blog posts a month about selling houses. And you'd be surprised how hard that is to do. There's only so much creative juice that any group of people can have in their brain. It's extremely difficult. So yeah, it's basically all kinds of topics just in the periphery of what you're looking to do. Longer articles do better, but you also have to contrast that with how many, right? So and it depends on the industry. In this industry, length isn't as important as it is in like B2B technology, for example, where like a lot of the stuff that ranks best has like 4,000 words because it's really informative. Like it's just a different kind of industry. So yeah. And then as for the content, it's just about like what kind of keywords you put into it. And it's about internal linking too. You want all of your web pages to naturally link to each other to kind of build strength throughout your entire website. So that's the kind of things that we're thinking. Like we like to make a blog post that we call a linkable asset, meaning this is a blog post that is of interest. So someone else would want to link to this because it is something good to reference in their blog post. So that's kind of how we write it. And then it's, we want to have a bunch of links to other blog posts and pages on our website within that article. And it has to have like keywords that we're trying to target within the article as well. And that's kind of what we look for.
What would be example of keywords for pay-per-click and topics for SEO, like how to sell your home fast? Would that be like a common one? how to I'm in foreclosure, how to get a cash offer, what would be like popular ones or maybe ones that work well?
Yeah, a lot of the biggest keywords are like sell my house fast, we buy houses,
Mhm.
sell house as is, um, cash house buyers, house for cash, like that kind of stuff. So, like, you just want to kind of include that, like house for cash, for example. The article might be titled like how you can sell your house for cash, right? And then it like
Mhm.
talks through all the stuff. Like Google takes into account like keywords that like sound really similar to that. So it's about like including all the different variations of it and all that kind of stuff, and something that's actually informative and actually makes sense to a human, and that kind of stuff. So that's an example of how you would go about it. Um, and the reality is, it's not always about like you writing that content and sellers even finding it.
Mhm.
For the most part, a lot of our blog posts don't even get that much traffic. It's just the fact that you wrote that and Google sees you're putting that stuff out. And then, for example, in that article, you link to your homepage, and maybe like the anchor text on the link says like "We buy houses" or something like that, and then that just makes your homepage slightly more likely to rank if someone were to search "We buy houses." And basically, like a lot of those pages add authority to one central place,
Mhm.
and it's a little bit confusing how it all works, but I guess the idea being it's all about looking like a relevant and authoritative company. Like that's pretty much what all this is about. Turns out in this industry, like that doesn't happen as naturally
Uh-huh.
because nobody like links to your website because you have super awesome information on selling houses for cash. It just doesn't really happen in this industry like it would in some other industries. So it's just about doing the best that you can and like doing things like pitching third party
Yeah.
websites to post your content and that kind of stuff.
What about like AI? Like I've seen like Facebook things on AI, or like we'll write your blog posts using this artificial intelligence. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, we don't currently use that. I know that some people do.
Mm.
I think it's just a faster way to write content. Potentially, it's one way to do it. We also outsource a lot of our content to writers, because you don't write. You can't just like put someone in a room and ask them to write 300 blog posts about selling houses every month. Like that's just impossible. Like
Yeah.
the key to doing that and making them all different is having a bunch of different writers, because every writer is going to make it different, but no one writer can write it in so many different ways. And for all we know, maybe some of our writers are using that. What we care about is that the content is good. I don't care how it's created. So it just can't be duplicated with anything else on the internet, and it has to be quality. So that's where we have like several like editing and revision stages. But for all I know, we're working with freelance writers that are just doing exactly that. And if they are, then it's working. So it's it's good. But yeah, it's just a tool. But I would never rely just on that. Like I know with those tools, it's like it can help you. Like it can like spit out a paragraph, but it's going to need a lot of editing and stuff like that too. So you can't.
Yeah.
At least they're not at that point right now.
Cool. Last two questions for you. The SEO, I know you've mentioned that you've got to be patient and that sometimes it takes some time. Like, what can somebody expect out of that? Like, is it a month? Is it 2 months, 6 months?
It is really tough to really say, because every market's going to be different, and also it's hard to say like when you've accomplished your goal. I think it's reasonable after 3 months to see movement in rankings going in a positive direction, and to see that accelerating through 6 months and all that kind of stuff. A lot of our clients investing money in SEO and PPC will find that SEO the first year is a lower return on investment. The second year it exceeds PPC generally. To give you a little bit of
Yeah.
context, but it's hard to say. Like you're never there on SEO. It's like you never finish. So it's not like as of this date you've officially accomplished your goal. It's just always working to get better.
Sounds good. And then the last question is, do you ever retarget people that you attract through PPC and SEO on Facebook after they've been on the website? Do you guys like run retargeting ads? Like, for example, if it doesn't convert on one of those websites, and is that a good
Absolutely.
strategy as well too?
Yes, we do it. Yes, it's a great strategy. I think everybody should do it.
To do it
So, and Facebook's an amazing platform for it. I think it's the best
for
retargeting platform
retargeting. Perfect.
that exists. Yeah.
Great. Brandon, I want to say thank you, obviously, for being on the show. I appreciate, obviously, you sharing. Where can people find you?
Yeah, so you can, if there's any investors listening that are interested in looking at creating a strategy for them specifically, they can, of course, reach out to us. BatemanCollective.com is the website. And you'll end up talking with someone on my team that can kind of point you in the right direction as to what would be a strategy that makes sense for you and all that kind of stuff. If you're running campaigns and you think that things could be better, or you want to get a second set of eyes on it, we can always arrange to do one of those free audits where we basically review all the data there. And that's probably the best way to reach out. You can also find me, LinkedIn, Facebook, all those kinds of places if you want to reach out to me personally.
Awesome, Brandon. Well, I appreciate your time. For all of our viewers, this was episode number 124 of the Residual Real Estate Agent Show. We had Brandon Bateman. He talked to us about how to find motivated seller leads, both on Facebook, pay-per-click, and SEO. If you've enjoyed this episode, make sure to hit that subscribe button. If you feel that it'll help a friend, make sure to hit that share button. Thank you guys so much, and we appreciate you. And thank you, Brandon.